I want to start by sharing a little bit of my story and how I ended up going into the field of helping others with mental illness. My story begins in New York as a young boy. My parents were married, and at 3, my parents began to get divorced. They had a really traumatic, rough relationship, and the marriage ended. My dad was a lawyer and was very angry that he only had limited visitation with me, and he ended up kidnapping me at age 3 in New York, and for 10 months I was unable to see my mom. And it was such a trauma to not really be able to be with her and to not know where she was, and it looked very, very bad for her and for me. She lost about 40 or 50 pounds during this time, and she was very depressed. Luckily, after 10 months, she hired a detective, and they were able to find me, and I was reunited with my mom. But that initial trauma from such a young age really played a big part on my psyche and made me very upset. For the next few years, I would be very insecure and try to mask all the problems I faced by accomplishing lots of goals. I ended up starting to collect autographs of famous people when I was about 6, and by the time I was over 13, I had met, you name it, Madonna, Michael Jackson, Tom Cruise, Paul McCartney, literally every famous person. And I had such a high level of energy. I would be running around, trying to find these people, figure out where they were, and instead of being looked at as a problem, people thought that I was just very successful and I had a lot of energy and was accomplishing things. At age 14, I went to Washington to try to meet President Bill Clinton. I tried to get his autograph and actually jogged after him for 4 miles. It was shown on CNN that a young person was trying to get his autograph, and it became this big national news story. President Clinton heard about the story, and about a week later invited me to meet him in the Oval Office. Sadly, within about a year from that time, I would really show the first signs of bipolar disorder. I was at my mom's, and I kept saying, I feel like my brain is bleeding. And she would say, no, you're going to be fine. You're probably okay. She ended up calling our primary care doctor, who said, I'm sure his brain is not bleeding. Just tell him to go to sleep. But I was very persistent. And for the next 5 or 6 hours, I kept saying, Mom, I'm dying, I'm dying. So finally, they took me to the emergency room at a local hospital in Long Island. When I got there, I told them about all the things I was doing, promoting a book, and collecting autographs and all these things. And they told my mom, they said, listen, we want to do a full evaluation on him. We think that he might have a mental illness. And I'll never forget the feeling of being walked down into the psychiatric unit and put in a room, and my mom walked out of there and she was crying hysterically, and the door to the locked door closed. I was in my first psychiatric hospital at age 15. I was put on different medicines, including lithium at the time, and given a diagnosis of bipolar 1. Sadly, in about 30 days, I was released from the hospital, but I wasn't really completely healthy yet. Years going in and out of 5 different psychiatric hospitals. Each stay was about a month, and I remember just feeling so upset and depressed and angry, and I had such a flood of emotions because to be a teenager and to be put in a hospital and to lose your freedom and not be able to have friends and to feel so different than the other kids, it really was a tough, traumatic time. At about 17, it had been very hard for my family seeing me in and out of these hospitals. They went to a top bipolar expert, and the doctor said that he didn't feel that I would have a good long-term prognosis. He said, please just expect Blake to likely end up in a permanent group home or psychiatric hospital. Now, my mom and I had developed a very close relationship, and she didn't want to accept that my life was pretty much at an end. So she continued to talk to every single doctor and she ended up um, going to uh, another doctor who believed that maybe there was a different type of medicine that would help all the behaviors that I had. They put me on what was then a new medicine like Devico, and within a couple of my brain began to calm down, and I felt a little bit more relaxed and was able to understand all the trauma and things that had been going on in my life. I asked God to give me a second chance, and I started to slowly and steadily rebuild my life. Since that time, I've been able to finish high school, went on to college, got my master's degree in social work, happily married to my wife for close to 7 years. We have a 4-year-old beautiful daughter. We have a son due in October. So why I share my story is I want you to know there is hope for you or your family member that is going through, different mental illnesses or bipolar disorder, and it's a really long road. I wanted to give some tips for families because sometimes it's so hard. Oftentimes, I work with mothers or fathers or people that are supporting those with bipolar, and it's a really hard battle because sometimes the people you're trying to help are angry, they're nasty to you, they can say things to make you feel upset, and it's sometimes a thankless job trying to help someone with mental illness because they fight you every step of the way. But you never know when the next point is that you're going to be able to help them. You're going to be able to get them to see something that maybe will change their life. And with bipolar is an exact science. We don't know the exact right medicine that's going to work perfectly for you. What works for me might not work for you or your loved one. So it is kind of a trial and error period. But I think some of the key tips for figuring out how to handle this is to keep a positive attitude during this time. I've learned in my life that when I focus on the good that is going on, it makes things much easier. And I also think if you're taking care of someone with bipolar, you want to be able to give them love and give them hope. Because I remember when I was at my sickest point, one of the main things was being able to know that I was cared about and know there was a reason to get better. I think when you are knocked down by bipolar, it often takes all of your energy. You feel like you've lost your ability to function. It's just so hard. And having that level of hope makes it a little bit easier and makes it feel like you can continue to go on and continue to have progress. Another thing I've learned is that support groups are so valuable. I go to a lot of the NAMI and EBSA groups because there they help people with different mental illnesses. And when you are around other people that are struggling with what you're struggling with, it helps you to know you're not alone. And I find that there's often a big feeling of isolation. When you have a mental illness, it makes you feel like you're different, like you have something that many other people don't, or that you feel like you're an outcast, and that really can be so dangerous and so toxic. And we hear about these school shootings and horrible things that happen. I think sometimes those children are really isolated and they don't have support around them or friends, and they end up doing things that ruin not only their lives but the lives of those around them. So I think what I would suggest, if you have a family member or a loved one, or you have a mental illness, you want to really get support around you. If you have a family, that's great. If you don't have great members around you, get a support group. There's things online. You can join tools and resources and things to help you learn more about your illness. I think becoming educated about bipolar is so valuable. You can go on to different resources and read books. The reason I wrote my book is I wanted to share all the lessons and all the experiences that have helped me to lead a fulfilling life. And I think you can go back and look at K. Redfield Jamison has written a number of wonderful books. Patty Duke has a great book, and you can start to read about the different things that are out there in terms of bipolar literature to educate yourself. Because unfortunately, what I've learned about bipolar is it's a lifelong battle. It's not something that you will instantly overcome or will be figured out immediately. You need to look at it on a very long-term scale. I know for myself, when I got to the point where I said I'm going to try to make slow, small steps leading to a fulfilling life, it made things much easier. And by doing that, everything has been able to be accomplished. I slowly went back to high school, slowly entered college, slowly got my master's degree. So I think in your life too, you want to figure out where are you going. What do you want to accomplish? Some people with bipolar function very highly and have high-level jobs and families and work. Some people with bipolar are unable to, handle the responsibilities of a job or doing things. So we're all at kind of a different place, but you want to figure out where are you and what small progress can you make. Even getting out there and doing exercise is wonderful. Going for a jog or a hike or a walk, getting out there in nature, getting fresh air, those types of things can help, make you feel more alive and take care of your health. Because not only do we have to deal with the mental illness, but we also have to deal with our physical health. Sometimes the medicines we take can cause problems. So the more you take positive steps, the healthier you can become. I also think families have to figure out how can they kind of be there for each other, because I sometimes meet mothers or fathers with bipolar children, and they've been fighting this battle for years. And it sometimes drains the energy of the caregiver more than it just drains the energy of the person living with the illness. So you might want to say to yourself, if you're a caregiver, how can you make sure you're okay? Maybe that means you're in therapy, or you go to a support group, where you have time to kind of unwind and not handle all this on your own, because it's such a burden to try to handle all these adversities. And sometimes we need a break. Sometimes you need a day to just unwind and not be stressed with the situations that are happening. Another key thing to learn is to figure out, what is the plan. I think in life we can make, decisions off the top of our head, but sometimes having a plan of where we want to go helps us get there. I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they often say that before they built their successful business, they had a plan of where they were today and where they were hoping to go. I think with mental health treatment, you can do the same thing and say, listen, right now my son or daughter is barely functioning. They're just getting out of the hospital, and I want to one day see them be able to go to college and have a job and have their own independent living. So that's your long-term goal. And then you want to take small steps and figure out how do you get from where they are today to there. And in everyone's case, it might be different. You might say, hey, I want to make sure they go see their doctor. I want to make sure they stay on their medication. I want to see that they're, socializing, they're making friends. All these things together will lead them to potentially getting to that goal. And it's a very long, arduous process. But the good news is there are people that come out to the other side and do well in their lives. And me sharing my story, that's been the greatest thing I've learned as I go talk to different groups and meet different people. Is there is hope, and oftentimes we feel so much of a struggle trying to deal with these situations and figure it all out on our own. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes we need additional help. I mean, I work as a life coach because sometimes the families, they want to ask me questions, or they want to try to figure things out. They want to have a sounding board, someone they can talk to about the different things that they're feeling and going through. So I think you should figure out how do you get someone in your life to help you and support you, because it's so important to keep, like I had said, a positive attitude, because it is a long challenge. Another key thing is, the relationships in the family. For many people with bipolar, I talk to them and they have strained relationships with their brothers or sisters or parents. And one of the key things is figuring out how do you improve those relationships. There might be someone with bipolar that did certain behaviors that made the other family members upset. I remember when I was sick, my brother and sister used to get angry at me because I would tease them or put them down. And part of that was I was so insecure from being sick, and kind of my behavior wasn't really in control, that they didn't know, how to respond. So not only did my parents have to figure out how to help me, my brother and sister had to figure out how to deal with me and give me a chance once I was healthy again. And, part of that too is figuring out a new way of living that is maybe healthier and getting along better with people. And sometimes, when people have bipolar, they have trouble interacting. I've worked with clients where they don't like to be around anyone. They'd rather be alone in their room, or alone and not really, engaging with anyone. And I think the root of that is it's sometimes hard to be around people. People sometimes have social anxiety or feel uncomfortable in social situations, but I think it's so important to be around others. I mean, I love doing this webinar and helping, but just getting in front of people is so important. Meeting others and interacting, because there is a sense, and I see this a lot with bipolar, where people go into a dark place in their mind and they end up just wanting to be alone in their room or alone on the computer and not really engaging in the real world. And part of that is such an issue is we need that human interaction. There's some type of connection you make when you look someone directly in the eyes, when you talk to them, when you share with them about your life. So I would say to you, if you have a loved one, even if they're not comfortable, around friends or other people, get them into a support group. Take them to the DBSA or NAMI, and get them engaged, because when you are around other people, there's really a potential to feel better and to feel more connected and more alive. And that's so important, because sometimes the mental illness takes away our ability to interact. It makes us feel weird. I remember myself just feeling so awkward. I was a teenager, and many other young people put each other down or call each other names. And now I'm mentally ill. I'm 16, 17. I have mental illness, and it's just so hard to feel judged and to feel different and to feel awkward. But I remember as I slowly started to make some friends again, and I started to be around other people, it boosted my confidence and it allowed me to feel like I was okay and there was, value in my life, and that just because I had a mental illness, it didn't mean that I didn't deserve to, have a positive, successful life. So I would say to you, figure out for those in your life or yourself how you can, engage them, and maybe just doing things, taking them for walks, taking them to the park, taking them out, slowly and steadily getting people ready to be around others. Because, I think at the end of the day, we all want to be accepted. We have this feeling of wanting to be able to be cared about, be loved, and it's kind of a normal human experience is to want to feel good enough. And sometimes when you have a mental illness, you don't feel good enough. You feel like maybe you're weird or strange or different, and that's not true. I mean, these days there are so many people that have some type of mental health condition. In fact, I believe most people have some type of mental health condition. So it's important for you to, keep the person you love, to understand that, to know that they can rebuild their life. And here's the thing too. It took me a number of years to get healthy, but when I did it in small steps, it became manageable. Even today, as I work and I do so many different projects and help people, I take small steps. Today is a day that I have 7 things written down. I'm going to do my best to do one after the other and try to get all 7 done. In the long run, 7 things a day adds up to 35 a week and hundreds of things in a year. And it's just those small steps that lead to success. What I want to say to you is, if you have a loved one or you have this illness, you just need to do small things every day. Write them down. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to try to, make a friend. I'm going to try to join a support group. I'm going to talk to my psychiatrist. I'm going to take my medicine. These little small steps lead to very long-term progress and healing. And, I've also been able to say and teach people that you have to take your medicine every day. The medicines are one of the biggest things to allow you to maintain your stability. And many people say, I don't like the way it makes me feel, or, I've taken it, or I don't really want to take it. It's like brushing your teeth. Most people, I hope, wake up and brush their teeth, and before they go to bed, they brush their teeth. Your medicine should be in your mind the same thing, something you just do every day. And what that allows you to do is maintain, your mental health. And also, if you're working with a doctor and a psychiatrist, they need to know that you're taking your medicine every day. If you're not taking it or doing that, you have to figure out with them, why you're not doing that. Because there's really no secret success to bipolar disorder. The key things I've learned is medicine with a good psychiatrist, working with a therapist or life coach, being part of support groups, and taking small and steady steps. These are things that pretty much anyone can do. And if you will just work on it and try to, make this happen in your life, you will see success. But if you try to walk away and do it on your own and, kind of fight what works, it's going to be harder. So I think you have to figure out, are you willing to move forward and stick with these tools and goals, or do you want to just do it on your own? And, if that's not been working for you, you might think, why I apologize, I have a little bit of a cold, but you might figure out, if you've been doing it another way, why is that not working? Maybe there is, something you have to do that will allow you to be successful. And I also want to just, I'm going to open this up to questions in a second, but I just want to say that you can accomplish anything in your life. I think when, I was diagnosed with bipolar, it kind of ripped away all my goals and my dreams, and I felt like I couldn't accomplish very much, and just surviving and being able to live outside of a hospital would be a big goal. But I've learned that you can do anything you want, and just despite having a mental illness, it doesn't take away who you are, it doesn't take away your energy, your creativity, your talent, your love of life, and you never want to lose who you are when you have this illness. You just want to get yourself so you can function normally and be healthy. And in my life, I've had so many beautiful experiences. I've written books and done documentaries and helped clients all over the world. And I never gave up on my goals and my dreams. And part of that is what kept me motivated. Saying to myself that if I could get healthy, I could do anything that I want. And I share with young people and adults, you can do anything you want. If you have a dream in your heart or a goal or a desire, you want to travel somewhere, you want to experience something, it's possible to make it happen. But the key step is to get yourself healthy so that you can start to see those things, appear in your life, and you can make things much better. I wanted to open this up. A lot of times when I do sorry, I wanted to open this up to questions because oftentimes when I do the talks, I let lots of people ask things that are important in their life, things that are going on, and to see if I could guide you and answer some questions. So I believe, Ashley, if you wanted to allow them to ask some questions, would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and some really great tips you gave everyone. Our first question is, how has your bipolar affected your life?
Well, my bipolar has been a major part of my life in the sense that I had this shift when I got sick. Um, all the things I thought were important were not as important. When you get hospitalized and you're not really able to function or go to school, it takes away all the other things that are going on. My main goal eventually became just to get healthy, just to be able to function and do well. And I think that that's what impacted it. I thought in my head I was on one road when I was a young boy. But when I got sick, it changed everything, and it said, okay, now I have to focus on this, and I have to get healthy, and that's been the change. It's also made me a better person because I've learned to think about how I treat people, how I act, how I interact with others, and what I can do for the world. It's not all about me and what I can get, it's about what I can give. So that's ended up making my life a lot better, and I'm very blessed that I learned that at kind of a younger age.
Our next question is, do you consider yourself cured?
Well, that's a great question. And people often say to me, because my book is called Beating Bipolar, can you beat bipolar? Can you be cured? And the answer is no. I mean, you will live with this illness for the rest of your life. But what I think is, in my case, things are really good. If you look at my life, for the most part, things are very positive and wonderful. And I haven't beat it. I still take my medicine every day. I still see a psychiatrist a couple times a year. I still work with a therapist, so it's not completely gone, but it's in check. And I am very healthy, and I'm able to be a dad. I'm able to be a husband. I'm able to be a friend. I'm able to work. So to me, that's the point where you want to get, where you're able to successfully live your life, even if you do have this condition.
Thank you. Do you have any suggestions for a parent of a recently diagnosed 26-year-old son who wants to be independent but is still very dependent on us, his parents, for financial support?
I get this question a lot with adults with bipolar disorder. They don't know if they should give money to the children or if the children should try to become independent. And what I would say is it's always great if the child can take care of themselves, but it's not always a possibility. I mean, there are plenty of people that are on disability because they can't work. Um, if you have a loved one with the illness, you want to be able to see maybe they can work 1 day a week, maybe they can work 5 days, or maybe they can't work at all. You want to, really try it. I would take small steps. So if they haven't worked in a while, get them working part time and see how that's going. If it does well, maybe they'll increase and they will go to more days. Or if they can't handle it, you can always, stop it. But it's a big problem. A lot of times for families, they have to figure out how they're going to take care of their children. And I get this question a lot. How do they, once the parents are 1 day gone, how do the parents take care of their children if they're not there to provide money or, be able to be helpful to them? And that's a big, scary situation. So what I would say is you want to deal with that early. I even have heard there's financial advisors out there that can help you plan. So if you need to, provide resources for your children after you're gone. Um, you might want to look into that ahead of time. And yeah, these are real situations that families with bipolar individuals, sometimes have to deal with.
Thank you. I have lots of questions. Were you ever resistant to treatment?
I was, yeah. I remember when I was first diagnosed, I was, oh, this is baloney. I'm not sick. I don't have a problem. I was angry at my mom and my dad. I hated my mom for a decent amount of time. She did this to me. I would be sick or in the hospital if it wasn't for her. I think that that's a very natural, normal experience that many of us face because we don't want to accept the fact that we're, mentally ill or that we have a problem. The time when I got healthy was when I finally said, wow, I can keep being in denial and keep going in and out of hospitals and end up in a permanent group home or hospital, or I can accept this and try to work on it. And when I accepted it and tried to work on it, things became much better.
Thank you. How has writing this book helped you?
Well, I think the book was a cathartic experience. Going back into my life and looking at all the different aspects was really helpful because it allowed me to remember, all the times that I had went through and to kind of see the other side and how far I've come. It's so nice to be able to realize that I'm doing so well despite the very dark and challenging places. I mean, I had a very, very rough couple of years. There were hallucinations, delusions, paranoia. I mean, it was about as bad as it usually gets. So to be able to come to the other side and do well, I'm so happy, and I feel so lucky to just be here and be able to lead a normal life.
Have you had to change your meds at all?
Well, originally I did change my meds, and I've been on the same ones for close to about 10 years. Um, I have lowered the dosages slightly because I don't quite need as much, but I've been on the same medicines for a long time. I did switch a couple of years ago trying a different medicine, but it didn't really work. So rather than risk my health and all that's done well, I went back to the medicine that I have been on for a long time.
Thank you. My dad had recently told my husband that he has been taking meds for bipolar disorder for a year. He has not disclosed this to myself, my mother, or my brother who lives in the home with him. How should I approach my dad about this, or should I approach him or inform my family?
Well, I would wonder if your dad is facing, embarrassment or shame. I mean, I think the old school mentality of men having to be, masculine and being able to handle everything. If some men feel like if they have a mental illness, they can't handle everything. But I would maybe, if it's important to you, talk to him and just say, Dad, a lot of people struggle with mental health issues, and it doesn't make you any lesser of a person. But I'd love to talk to you about it and know about what's going on in your life.
Do you think that two people with bipolar can have a successful relationship if one takes meds and the other does tries to deal with the illness without medication?
Well, I mean, first of all, I get a lot of questions about relationships with bipolar disorder because as human beings, we want to, be with other people and get into relationships. Um, Look, if one of you is doing one thing and one of you is doing another, I mean that's fine if it works. But if you're not on medicine and it's not working for you and you're very volatile, it could affect the relationship. I mean, I don't tell anyone exactly what to do because you have to figure out what's going to work best in your own life. But we have seen that medicine and therapy is usually what works. I would just say that if you are in that relationship where one is taking medicine and one's not, you should both let each other, walk their own path if you're healthy. I mean, if the person with medicine is doing doing well, let them continue, leading their life. If the person without medicine is doing well, let them continue leading their life. If you're both having problems, though, or either one of you, you definitely should try to address them because it could, impact the relationship.
My 19-year-old son was just hospitalized for the first time yesterday. He is in deep denial. What can you recommend saying to him to help him understand he has this diagnosis?
Well, I would go slowly. I think when someone is just hospitalized, it's very traumatic. To be in a hospital, and oftentimes I remember seeing so many different people with lots of different mental illnesses, and I was a little kid, and watching all this stuff, it was very traumatic. So, that person is probably going through some trauma right now, and you want to go slowly with them. And kind of just tell them how much you care about them and you love them, and give them a little bit of time to start accepting what they're facing.
How do you deal with stigma?
Well, part of the best way of dealing with stigma is not being ashamed. I learned that I didn't want to be embarrassed by having bipolar. In the beginning, I thought, what if people find out, or what if people know, or will relationships and people judge me? But by being honest about it, I've learned that it's okay to accept who you are, and I think that what we're trying to do is eliminate the stigma as much as possible. And you see people out there that are well known sharing about their lives, whether it's Patty Duke or um, Kennedy or um, Demi Lovato, the teen singer, or Catherine Zeta-Jones, or any of these people that are functioning very highly. I think it gives other people hope, and I like to share my story because I want others to know you can do well, and that creates less stigma. Whereas when we hear only on the news about Amanda Bynes or people that are getting arrested that have bipolar, it makes it more of a stigma because then we think that maybe those with bipolar are dangerous. But the facts are, it's like anything. There are some great people with bipolar, and there are some people that are not stable. So it's hard to just lump all of us into a thing and say, oh, we're all this or we're all that. I think by showing positive examples of those living with bipolar, it does lessen stigma and improves the outlook for all of us.
Thank you. I have a 20-year-old son with bipolar 1. As a family, we are struggling with how much support to provide versus how much to let him go on his own. That boundary of supporting someone whose decision making function is impaired and who needs help making good decisions versus letting someone fail and learn from their mistakes. Do you have any advice in this area? He struggles with med management as well and staying on those. A decision to go off those always proves costly.
Well, 20 is a tough age because she's not quite a child, but just barely an adult. And I think you want to, if she's willing to accept your help, take it. But it starts getting tricky because, 20-year-olds sometimes like to be independent and like to kind of lead their own life. But if they had a mental illness, they might need more support. So, I would continue trying to help. I mean, that's one of the hard things is needing to be so persistent. Sometimes when you have a loved one, with this illness, you can't try one time and give up. It might take 10 times or even 1,000 times. And that's really challenging for the caregiver, but sometimes that's what works. Just continually trying to help them and saying, listen, we have to deal with this. And then sometimes if they're that resistant, letting them go a little bit. But, when they hit that rock bottom, trying to help them, not letting them stay there because if you have a mental illness, you sometimes don't see things so clearly, and you want to be able to support that person. So, I would just try to go slowly and give them as much support as you can.
Thank you. Um, our 27-year-old son is on clozapine and lithium. He hardly eats but weighs 270 pounds. This is difficult for him and hard to find clothes. Did you ever have weight gain due to meds? His doctor does not seem concerned about his weight. We are aware of possible health issues such as diabetes, and he is showing signs of high blood pressure and refuses to exercise.
That's a big problem. I mean, we definitely, know that some of the medicines cause weight gain. And I think that you have to figure out ways to combat that. I mean, in my own life, the medicine caused a little bit of weight gain, which is not fun. I mean, who wants to gain weight? But I fight it every day. I do my best to eat healthy. I exercise. I do, 4, 5, 6 days a week of some type of workout. you need to fight it. If you just let yourself get huge and you gain a lot of weight, you are facing a lot of health conditions, and it's not fun to deal with this. And I wish this wasn't true, but you don't want to get diabetes, or if you have diabetes, you don't want it to get worse. So that means that you have to combat it by exercising and trying to eat well. And look, it's hard. I mean, if people are mentally unstable, they're not so caring sometimes about exercising and going and eating healthy. But you have to really try, because I mean, I was just reading an article about the lifespan of people with bipolar being less, and I think it's up to us to try to be healthy as much as possible so that we can extend our lifespan and potentially have long lives. And the positive side is, if you are on medicine, um, you're not supposed to drink. So by not drinking alcohol, or limiting your alcohol, that's very good for you. You're not supposed to use other types of illegal drugs. So while many people use marijuana and other drugs, you're not doing that. So sometimes by those things that you're not doing, it will help improve your health. Whereas many people that don't have bipolar drink or do drugs and end up, having their own issues from those things. So, it's a challenging tightrope to kind of walk on, but you do want to do your best to keep yourself as healthy as possible.
Thank you for that. Our next question is that I have an adult child who refuses to let us talk to his therapist, and therapists refuse to work as a team with other therapists. Do you have any suggestions for this?
Well, as a therapist, you're supposed to only talk to the person that the patient allows you to talk to, and that's tough, But there's certain ways that you can maybe, if you're paying for the sessions, let's say, right? If you're the one that's paying, you have the right to say to your child, "Listen, if you want this, here's what I want in return." I mean, there is in life negotiations. Maybe that child, you pay for their car, or you pay for their school, or you pay for their things. If you feel like you need to be involved with their therapist, you might negotiate with them and say, "Listen, this is what we want in exchange for this." And if they still won't do it, that's fine. But I mean, it depends how tough the situation is, and how I don't think the therapist always needs to know everything that the parents want to tell them. If the situation is very dangerous, though, maybe it is helpful for everyone to talk and to be on the same page. So, I mean, if it's just going to a therapist to let out what they're feeling, I think people should have privacy and be able to talk about it. If it's a risky situation where you don't know if the person's going to be able to survive, then maybe being able to share things with the doctors or the therapists would be helpful.
The next question is, do you have family support?
Yeah, I have a lot of family support. Um, I mean, originally my mom and dad and stepfather and brother and sisters, they were all very supportive. I mean, I remember when I was in the hospitals and they would come visit me, it was so, it made me feel so good knowing that they cared and knowing that they would, come and be supportive. And now, I'm married and I have a child and another one on the way, so I get a lot of support from my wife and from my child and friends. And I try to build around me as much support, as possible. And yeah, and even I help clients, and that's very rewarding for me to go back and help others that are facing tough situations.
Great. My son is in a 6 week inpatient program now and wants to attend college when he is released. How do I help him understand to take small steps without him getting the message that I think he can't handle it?
Well, I think just being honest. I mean, honesty sometimes um, is the best way. And I see this a lot. If someone just went through a tough time, maybe taking 5 or 6 classes in college is too much at once. So maybe they go back and they take one, and they take one class and they do well. And the nice thing about that is, if they do the one class and they, get a good grade, they'll be happy. They'll say, "Hey, I got an A or a B," and they'll have more energy to continue on and to take more classes. And to me, look at it this way: if they graduate college in 5 years versus 4, in the realm of life, does that really make that big of a difference? Even if it took them 6 years to do a 4 year college, they still have their degree. And many people, when I was in graduate school for social work, many people were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and finally were going back to school. So it doesn't matter how quickly they do it; it just matters that they do it and it's manageable. And I would just say, listen, let's try one or two classes. If you're doing well, the next semester you can always up it and take more.
What financial boundaries did you or and your parents institute that helped you establish financial independence?
Well, that's a good question. My parents, my dad especially, taught me about finances, taught me about managing money, trying to live below my means, which means trying to spend less than what you make, trying to be modest. If you have $50 in your pocket, try to spend 20 or 30. Try to save a little bit. I mean, it's not easy. Look, I mean, in modern society. I have a family, I have children, I have expenses. I do my best to manage everything, and it's sometimes there's a lot of pressure. And from what I know, most people with or without a mental illness, financially face pressure. But I've learned to do my best to, manage things and also to get help. If you find that it's too much for you, maybe you need someone to help you. Maybe you need a professional, an accounting professional, or someone and just learning to take small steps and even taking a course. I mean, there's classes you can take to learn online or in person about managing money, and I think that's great for anyone. I mean, I think whether you have a mental health condition or not, that's one of the big challenges in the world is trying to figure out how to manage money. And when money's so tight, like it is for many these days, it's hard. So it's an even tougher challenge if you're facing mental health issues.
Thank you. A common theme with bipolar is non compliance with meds, but many psychiatrists aren't proactive in follow up in terms of patient follow up for labs or taking meds. But how does a caregiver help loved ones with resistance because psychiatrists won't necessarily consult with parents of young adults?
Um, I mean, I think there's, I don't know if that question means that not all the psychiatrists are doing well at their jobs. And I mean, if that's what the question is saying, I think it's like anything, and I write this in my book. It took me a number of doctors to find the right one. Look, one of them said, who was an expert, said I wasn't going to be here today, and be living out of a hospital. So obviously that wasn't a good doctor for me. And thank goodness my mother didn't continue to see him. I think like any type of healthcare, if the person you're working with isn't helping or isn't providing adequate care, you got to find someone else. And I often talk to people that go to 5 or 6 different doctors until they find the right one. And it's even with a therapist or a life coach, it's about connecting with the person. I might be the best coach for someone and be able to help them, and for someone else, it might not be the best fit. So you want to find people to work with that you feel connected to, that will help you, and that are really doing a good job. Because like any field, there's people that are great at what they do and that are really there for the right reasons, and there's some that are not as good. So you want to find people that you feel comfortable working with.
Great, we have time for two more questions.
Sure.
Have you ever been concerned that your children could be diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Yeah, well, that was a big question for my wife and I. I obviously have bipolar, and I have some relatives that have undiagnosed mental illness. So that was always a fear. But what we decided was, um, I know enough about mental illness that, God forbid it happened, we would be very aware. In my case, when I got sick, my family had no idea. It took them a long time to figure out, what was going on and how to handle it. Whereas now, I really understand so much about the illness. I also think that I would never not want a child to come into this world because they have bipolar. There is so much good within many of us that have this illness that we deserve to have a good, healthy life. And I felt so blessed. I mean, to have a child, and she seems completely healthy, and she'll probably, hopefully, be healthy her whole life. Um, but it's the nicest thing that's ever happened in my life is getting married and having a child, and being able to be a dad. And in fact, I'm a really good dad. I think that I surprised myself in how good I am at it and how natural I am at helping her. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And our last question is, what type of coping skills can you leave us with that have worked for you?
Sure. Well, I get a lot of people with bipolar having anger issues, and I think when you're with your family or a loved one or in a relationship, you have to let that anger out in a positive way. So whether it's getting a punching bag in your basement, going and hitting the punching bag, taking a pillow, hitting the pillow, going into your car, going into a quiet area and yelling and getting out that anger, you want to let out the anger, the frustration in a positive way versus yelling or screaming at those you care about and those you love. Another coping skill I would say is, not holding it in. Oftentimes, I meet people with bipolar that don't want to admit that they're hallucinating or paranoid or delusional or that they're feeling really insecure or sad. You have to let those feelings out. When you hold in too much of your emotions, even if you're a caregiver and it's really hard for you, you have to talk about it too because sometimes it's just so hard holding it in that when you let it out, it makes things easier and lets you move forward.
Thank you so much, Blake. I just wanted to leave you with one comment that we just received, which is, you're an inspiration. Thank you for your honesty and time.
Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for participating today. Have a great day. Bye bye.